She thinks she's too good to eat. You see how she's sitting there, picking at her food like she's better than this table. Gold digger. That's all she is. A fine face and an empty account chasing my son's name. I said what I said.
The woman who spoke those words was seated at the head table of her son's wedding reception in a ballroom in Abuja's Maitama district, dressed in burgundy lace that had cost more than most people in that room earned in a month. She had a microphone in her hand because she had insisted on giving a toast. She had an audience of 212 people because her son had a large family and an even larger social circle. And she had absolute certainty in her voice because she had never, in 61 years of living, been publicly wrong about anything.
The woman she was describing sat 6 feet away at the same table. Adaeze Obi did not flinch. She did not look down. She did not reach for her husband's hand. She lifted her glass of water, took a small sip, set it back down with the same deliberate quiet she brought to everything, and looked at her mother-in-law with an expression that was not anger, and was not hot, and was not the desperate plea of a woman waiting to be defended.
It was patience. The particular patience of someone who already knows how a story ends and has decided there is no need to rush it. Nobody in that ballroom knew her net worth. By the end of the year, everybody would. There is a specific kind of woman Lagos and Abuja produce quietly and without announcement. Not the kind who arrives in rooms and commands them. The kind who arrives, finds a corner, and within an hour has learnt more about that room than anyone in it intended to reveal. Adaeze Obiora was 34 years old when she got married. She had been building things since she was 22, not loudly, not with press releases or industry award ceremonies or profile features in glossy magazines. She built the way her grandmother had taught her to cook, slowly, with attention, tasting as she went, never announcing the meal before it was ready. Her grandmother had raised her in Onitsha after her parents died in a road accident when Adaeze was 9. Mama Chioma was not a woman of formal education. She had a stall in the main market where she sold fabric and notions. And she had a mind that could calculate profit margins faster than most accountants Adaeze would later employ. She taught Adaeze 3 things before anything else. Never tell people what you have until you know what they want from you. Never let anyone see the full hand. And never, under any circumstance, confuse someone's opinion of your value with your actual value. Those are 2 entirely different things, and only one of them is real. Adaeze had carried those lessons like a second skeleton, the structure beneath everything visible. She studied economics at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, graduated second in her department, took a position at a mid-sized investment firm in Lagos at 23. Not because it was prestigious, but because it was instructive. She spent 3 years learning how money actually moved. Not how textbooks said it moved, but how it moved in practice. Through relationships and timing and the particular information that only reached people who had made themselves indispensable. At 26, she left the firm and started a small real estate consultancy from a single room in a shared office space in Surulere. Her first client was a retired civil servant who wanted to sell a property in Lekki and did not trust agents. Adaeze found him a buyer in 11 days, negotiated a price that exceeded his expectation by 8%,
and charged a commission that was fair enough that he sent her 3 referrals within the month. She did not advertise. She did not build a loud social media presence. She built a reputation, the way her grandmother had built her store, one satisfied person at a time, each one telling the next with the specific enthusiasm of someone sharing a discovery they feel personally responsible for. By 30, she owned 4 properties outright. By 32, her consultancy had 14 staff and had facilitated transactions worth over 2 billion naira in a single financial year. She had a quiet portfolio that included equity stakes in 2 logistics companies and a minority position in a fintech startup that had recently attracted international attention. She did not discuss any of this at dinner parties. She did not drop figures into conversation. She wore good clothes that were not conspicuous. She drove a car that was comfortable without being a statement. When people asked what she did, she said real estate. Simply, in the way that people say things they have decided are not the most interesting thing about them. This was not false modesty. It was philosophy. Mama Chioma's first lesson, lived out daily. Never show the full hand until you know the table. When Emeka Nwosu entered her world, she applied the same discipline. Emeka Nwosu was the 3rd son of Chief Bartholomew Nwosu, one of Abuja's more recognizable names in construction and government contracting. The Nwosu family had the particular visibility of old Abuja money, not the flashiest in the room, but present in every important room. Their name on buildings and committees and the guest lists of events that were not publicized, but were understood to matter. Emeka himself worked in his father's company, senior project manager. He was competent without being exceptional. He had his father's steadiness and his mother's social instincts, which was to say, he understood rooms quickly and moved through them with ease. He was 37, well-dressed without effort, the kind of man who had never had to work very hard to be liked. They met at a property investment forum in Abuja. Adaeze was there as a panelist. Emeka was there because his father had asked him to attend and represent the family's development interests. She spoke for 12 minutes on land acquisition risk in secondary Nigerian cities and said more in those 12 minutes than the other 3 panelists combined. Emeka, sitting in the 3rd row, had come expecting to leave early. He stayed to the end. He found her at the networking session afterward, not with a line. He had a specific question about one point she had made regarding valuation methodology in Enugu State. It was a real question, not a pretense for conversation, which she could tell immediately. She answered it. They spoke for 20 minutes. He asked for her card. She gave it to him and thought nothing more about it. He called 3 days later with a follow-up question that was also a real question. And this became the pattern of the early months. He found genuine reasons to be in contact. She responded to the genuine ones and redirected the less genuine ones back to substance, which he found disorienting in the best possible way. What he told his friends was that she was unlike anyone he had pursued before. What he meant, though he didn't have precise language for it yet, was that she was the first woman he had encountered who was not at all interested in being impressive to him. She was impressive the way the ground is solid, not performing the quality, simply possessing it. What he did not know through the entire courtship, through the 11 months of calls and dinners and the slow building of something real between them, was the full picture of what she had built. She had not lied to him. She had answered every direct question honestly. She had simply not volunteered the full account. He knew she was successful. He knew she owned property. He knew her consultancy was doing well. He did not know the specific numbers. He had not asked the specific numbers, partly because it did not seem important, in the way it might have seemed important to a smaller man, and partly because Adaeze had a quality that made numbers feel beside the point when you were in a room with her. His mother, Nwosu, did not share this quality. Nwosu was a woman who had built her identity entirely on the architecture of what her family possessed. Not cruelly, not deliberately. It was simply the only framework she had ever been given, and she had never had sufficient reason to question it. She had married Chief Bartholomew at 24, when his first contracts were coming in, had watched the money grow, had organized her life around its management and display, and had developed over 4 decades a precise and unforgiving taxonomy of people based on their financial and social position. She could read a handbag at 30 meters. She could calculate a family's net worth from the car they drove and the neighborhood they mentioned. She was not malicious in this. She was, in her own mind, simply accurate. When Emeka brought Adaeze to the family house in Asokoro for the first time, Chidinma conducted the assessment with the focused efficiency of a woman who had done it many times. The car Adaeze arrived in, the handbag, the shoes. Good, she noted, but not aspirational. The way she greeted, respectful but not eager. The absence of jewelry that announced itself. Chidinma noted all of it and filed her conclusion before Adaeze had finished the first cup of tea. She said nothing that evening. She was not a woman who revealed her hand early. What she did instead was make inquiries. She had a network built over 40 years of Abuja society. Other wives, other mothers, people who knew things. She sent out the name, Adaeze Obiora, real estate consultant, Lagos, Onitsha originally. What came back was incomplete. A consultancy, some property holdings, no family name of significance, no father whose name opened doors, no visible wealth markers of the kind Chidinma understood as legitimate, no sprawling family compound, no recognition at the level of events Chidinma attended, no inherited position. This was enough. In Chidinma's taxonomy, a woman without visible inheritance and without a father's name was a woman looking for both from someone else's family. She called Emeka the following week. "My son, I want to talk to you about this woman you are seeing." Her manner was warm, which was how she delivered things she had already decided. Emeka listened. He pushed back, gently, the way he had learned to push back against his mother, which was to say, without enough force to change anything. "I know her, Mama. She's not what you think." Chidinma received this the way a woman receives a statement that does not fit her existing data. She filed it under, "My son is confused," and moved forward with her assessment unchanged. Over the following months, as the relationship moved towards something formal, Chidinma's campaign was not loud. It was the kind of sustained, quiet undermining that operates through implication and social pressure. A comment at a family gathering, a question posed to the room rather than to Adaeze directly. What does her family do? Where are her people from? She asked about wealth the way some women ask about health, with the concerned face of someone seeking information for your own good. Adaeze attended these gatherings with the composure that had become her signature. She answered the answerable questions. She did not take the bait of the unanswerable ones.
She brought food when she visited. She asked after the younger siblings with genuine warmth. She treated Chidinma with the specific respectful distance of a woman who understands exactly what is happening and has decided not to dignify it with a reaction.
This drove Chidinma to a particular frustration she could not name. There was nothing to catch, no wound to press, no gap in the armor through which she could insert the narrative she had already decided was true.
Emeka watched all of it. He knew his mother. He knew Adaeze. He told Adaeze more than once, "She will come around. I know her." Adaeze looked at him the way she looked at projections she considered optimistic. She said nothing.
He proposed on a Sunday afternoon in Adaeze's Lagos apartment. No audience, a ring he had spent real time selecting. She said yes, the way she did everything, without performance, without screaming, with her hand in his and a long, quiet exhale, and the particular brightness of a woman who has done her own due diligence and arrived at a conclusion she trusts. The wedding was set for 8 months out. In those 8 months, Nwosu ran out of patience and strategy simultaneously. The wedding was everything Adaji had not asked for and Emeka's family had insisted upon. The Nwosus did not do quiet weddings. They did events. The ballroom in Maitama was the same venue they had used for the eldest son's wedding 6 years prior. Ivory and gold this time, rather than ivory and blue, a distinction Chidinma had discussed at length with the decorator and explained to 3 separate people as a deliberate evolution of the family aesthetic. 212 guests, politicians' wives and contractors, and the layered social world of Abuja money, with its particular codes and hierarchies, and the way everyone in the room both watched and was being watched simultaneously. A live band, a reception that had been organized with the attention of people who understood that events were not celebrations so much as public statements. Adaeze had attended to her own details quietly. The gown, designed by a woman she had worked with years ago on a project in Lagos, structured and spare and deeply considered, the kind of dress that rewards looking closely. Her bridesmaids were 4 women she had known for years, chosen for what they were to her rather than for how they would read in photographs. Her makeup was done by a woman her youngest bridesmaid recommended and who had the quality Adaeze most valued in anyone she allowed close to her. She listened before she started. The ceremony was held in the afternoon and was beautiful in the way things are when the love inside them is real, even when the staging around them is complicated. Emeka saw her at the entrance of the hall and stopped moving for a full 3 seconds, which his best man would talk about at every opportunity for the following 5 years. Adaeze walked toward him and thought, this part is true, whatever else this day contains. The reception was when it happened. Chidinma had requested the first toast. This was understood to be her right as the groom's mother, and no one had offered an objection. She rose at the head table at 40 minutes into the reception, took the microphone from the MC with the practiced ease of a woman accustomed to commanding rooms, and began. The first 3 minutes were traditional. A mother's words about her son, his qualities, his upbringing, the family he came from. The room listened with the polite attention given to expected speeches. Glasses were lifted. There was warmth. Then something shifted, not dramatically. Chidinma's voice did not change in volume or pace. The shift was subtler than that. The tonal movement from celebration to something with an edge beneath it. We prayed for a wife for our son who would love him for what he is, not for what this family has built. She paused. Because there are women who look at a man and see him, and there are women who look at a man and see a door into something they have not been able to reach on their own. The room settled in the uncomfortable way rooms settle when they understand something is being said beneath what is being said. I am a mother. I will always protect my son. She looked at Adaeze then, directly, with the smile of a woman who has decided that what she is about to say is concern and not cruelty, and has arranged her face accordingly. Gold diggers are real. That is all I will say. I said what I said. May God protect this family. She set the microphone down, lifted her glass. The room produced a fractured, uncertain applause. The sound of 200 people deciding simultaneously what reaction was appropriate and landing on the least committed option. Adaeze sat 6 feet away. She had heard every word. Every word had landed exactly where it was aimed. She understood the precision of it. The way Chidima had wrapped the insult in a mother's concern. The way she had made denial impossible by never actually making a direct accusation. Just a statement, a prayer, a warning dressed as wisdom. The women at the table nearest Adaeze were watching her. Not unkindly, the way people watch someone who has just been handed something heavy in public, uncertain whether to acknowledge the weight or pretend it is light. Adaeze lifted her glass of water, took a small sip, set it back down. She looked at her mother-in-law across the table with an expression that was not anger and was not hot. It was the particular calm of a woman who has known since the first cup of tea in Asokoro that this moment was coming and has spent the intervening months deciding exactly who she would be inside it. She would not be small. She would not be defensive. She would not reach for her husband's hand and make her stability dependent on his response. She would be exactly what she had always been in rooms that underestimated her. Present, composed, and patient. The truth did not need her help. It had never needed her help. It was already in motion. The way large things are always already in motion before anyone thinks to look. She turned to the bridesmaid on her right and began a quiet conversation about the band's choice of opening song. The table watched her do this and did not fully know what to make of it. Emeka, beside her, took her hand beneath the tablecloth. She let him. That was the wedding. That was the moment everyone present would later claim to remember clearly, though they would each remember it differently. The truth arrived the way Adaeze did everything, without announcement, through legitimate channels, at a pace that could not be rushed or managed or reframed by anyone who had not been paying the right kind of attention. The first piece surfaced 3 weeks after the wedding, a business feature in a Lagos property publication, the kind of trade magazine that circulated among developers and investors and the financial adjacents of Abuja society. A profile of the 15 most active real estate consultancies in Nigeria by transaction volume over the previous 3 years. Obiora Property Intelligence was listed at number 4. The profile included a quote from Adaeze. It included a figure, the transaction figure for the previous year alone. Somebody at the Nwosu family's church saw it first. She sent it to her sister, who knew Chidima's closest friend, who had also attended the wedding. The message arrived in a WhatsApp group before 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning with 2 words beneath the screenshot. The second piece came from a different direction. A contact at a financial services firm in Lagos mentioned, in the context of a completely unrelated conversation with one of Chief Bartholomew's associates, that Obiora Property Intelligence had been instrumental in a land acquisition deal in the Lekki Free Trade Zone corridor that had returned significant value to several quiet investors. He mentioned a name. The name traveled. The third piece was the one that finished the picture. Adaeze had, some 18 months before the wedding, taken a board seat at a mid-sized microfinance institution that had recently restructured and attracted new capital. The institution filed public documents, as institutions do. Her name was on those documents. Her equity stake was on those documents. The documents were not hidden. They were simply the kind of documents that are only found by people who know where to look.
Someone in Abuja knew where to look. By the second month after the wedding, the picture had assembled itself in the drawing rooms and WhatsApp threads of the same social world that had sat in that Maitama ballroom and heard Chidinma Nwosu suggest that her new daughter-in-law was chasing the family's money. The numbers that circulated were not precise. Numbers that travel through social networks never are. But they were in the right direction. And the direction they were in recontextualized the wedding speech with a thoroughness that no confrontation, no argument, no dramatic unmasking could have achieved. This was what Adaeze had understood since Onitsha, since Mama Choma's stall in the main markets, since the first lesson. Never show the full hand until you know the table. She had known the table. She had held the hand. And she had waited for the world to read it for her, which it had done, as the world always eventually does, on its own schedule and with its own particular efficiency. She did not call Emeka. She was not ready for that conversation. She did not call her husband. She did not call her friends. She sat in the quiet of her own parlor and experienced for perhaps the first time in her adult life the specific sensation of a woman who has publicly and loudly and irrevocably been wrong. Not wrong the way one is wrong about the weather or a recipe. Wrong in front of 212 people about the character and worth of a woman she had spent a year trying to diminish. The ceiling fan continued its slow rotation. Chidinma Nwosu sat beneath it and did not move for a very long time. Emeka had known more than his mother suspected and less than Adaeze had. This was the particular position he had occupied through the entire year before the wedding, and it was the position he now had to reckon with honestly. He had known Adaeze was doing well. He had understood she was financially independent in a real sense, not the polite sense people meant when they said the phrase about women who earned their own small salary and called it freedom. He had simply not pressed for specifics, because pressing for specifics about a woman's money had always seemed to him like a particular kind of smallness he did not want to embody. What he had not accounted for was that his lack of pressing had allowed his mother's imagination to fill the space with her own conclusions. And because he had never corrected those conclusions directly, they had calcified into certainty. He and Adaeze had one conversation about it. Not a long one, not a dramatic one. On a Sunday morning, 6 weeks after the wedding, sitting in the kitchen of their Abuja apartment with coffee. The kind of ordinary Sunday morning that is the real texture of a marriage rather than its ceremonies.
You knew, Adaeze said. Not an accusation. A question with a specific shape. I knew enough. Not everything. Why didn't you tell her? Not what I have. Why didn't you tell her who I was? When she started, before the wedding, Emeka was quiet for a moment. He was honest because she was the kind of person who made honesty feel like the only reasonable option. Adaeze looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded, slowly. The nod of someone who finds the answer both understandable and insufficient, but has decided the relationship is worth more than being right about the insufficiency.
We won't have this conversation again, she said, not as a threat, as a fact. Because going forward, you will speak for me when it matters. Not about what I own, about who I am. Those are different things, and you know the difference. He did know the difference. That was one of the reasons she had married him. He called his mother that afternoon. Chidinma requested to visit 3 months after the wedding. Not through Emeka, directly. She called Adaeze's number on a Wednesday morning, and the phone rang twice before Adaeze picked up, which told Chidinma something she had not expected, that she had been neither screened nor avoided, simply answered. I would like to come and see you, if you are willing. Adaeze said yes, without elaborating. She gave it time. She ended the call without warmth and without coldness. The precise temperature of a woman who has not decided to punish someone, but has also not decided to pretend nothing happened. Chidinma arrived on a Saturday afternoon. She wore no burgundy lace this time. She wore a simple Ankara blouse and a wrapper. And she came without the social armor of her public self, which Adaeze noted and gave credit for. Adaeze received her in the living room. She offered tea. Chidinma accepted. They sat across from each other in the specific quiet of 2 women who have said too little and too much to each other and are now sitting with the space between. Chidinma spoke first because she had come to speak first. That was the only honest reason for the visit, and she had decided on the drive over that she would not waste Adaeze's time or her own by dressing it as anything else. What I said at the wedding, I said because I believed it. I want you to know that. I am not asking you to forgive a mistake I did not know I was making. I am asking you to forgive a judgment I made about you before I allowed myself to know you. Those are different things. I know the difference, Adaeze said. Mama Chioma taught me early that people who misjudge you are not always malicious. Sometimes they are simply working with the wrong information and too much confidence in what they think they can see. Chidinma was quiet. What I want you to understand, Adaeze continued, is that what I have was never the point. I did not keep it from this family as a strategy. I kept it because I grew up learning that the first thing a person shows you about themselves is what they value. And I wanted to know what this family valued before I showed them anything about me. She paused. She lifted her cup of tea. The room was very quiet. I am willing to build that, Adaeze said. If you are, not because of what I know now, but because you came here on a Saturday afternoon and told me the truth about what you did without being asked to. That is not nothing. You showed me at the wedding, in front of 200 people. You showed me that what this family values is visible wealth and the social position it confirms. And I sat in that ballroom and I was not angry. I was sad because wealth I have. But a family that sees a person clearly, that is not something money can build.
That has to be chosen deliberately, one day at a time. She paused. Chidinma Nwosu sat in her daughter-in-law's living room and felt, for the second time in 3 months, the particular sensation of being seen clearly by someone she had catastrophically underestimated. This time, it was not uncomfortable. This time, quietly, it felt like the beginning of something she had not expected to find at 61 years old: an education. The griot closes this story the way all honest stories must be closed. Not with numbers announced or victories celebrated, with a simple truth that was always there, waiting for the room to get quiet enough to hear it. A woman's worth is not confirmed by the people who question it. It was never in their hands to begin with. The woman who knows what she carries does not need to set it on the table for inspection. She simply waits. The table always reveals itself first. The griot has spoken. If you followed this story to the very end, I truly appreciate you. Please take a moment to subscribe and join our growing family of story lovers. And before you go, there is another beautiful story on your screen right now. Go ahead and watch. I promise it is worth your time.